The coffee was cold again. Third time this week I'd watched it grow a skin while staring at my wife's Instagram feed at 5:30 in the morning. Jenna's latest post showed her in workout gear, arms wrapped around some muscle-bound trainer with the kind of smile that said she'd found her happiness and didn't care who knew it. Sometimes you have to break someone's heart to find your own happiness, read the caption. Subtle as a brick through a window. I'm Ed Sampson, 42, insurance adjuster for Hartwell and Associates here in Millbrook, Maine. Not the kind of guy who turns heads or inspires poetry, but I've spent 20 years investigating fraud, learning to spot lies, and reading between lines that people think are invisible. My wife apparently forgot that small detail. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of our ancient refrigerator. Jenna had left for her early morning workout an hour ago. Funny how she'd never shown interest in fitness during our 8 years of marriage until 3 months ago, when she joined Pinnacle Fitness and met Luke the trainer Petrov. Luke. Even his name sounded like something from a romance novel written by someone who'd never met an actual human being. I scrolled through more posts. There was Jenna at some juice bar, laughing with perfect teeth at something off camera. There she was again, this time in Luke's car, her hand on his arm like she was claiming territory. The comments were full of heart emojis and "you deserve happiness, girl" from her friends Tara and Marcy. My phone buzzed. Text from Pete, my coworker, and the closest thing to a best friend I had left. "Coffee? You sound like you need it." Pete knew. He'd been watching me watch Jenna drift away for months, offering the kind of silent support that comes from 20 years of friendship. Big guy, former college football player, who'd gone soft around the middle but kept the protective instincts. I typed back. "Already had 3 cups. Meet me at the office early? Got some paperwork to handle." What I really had was project extraction. 3 weeks of careful planning, executed while Jenna thought I was too boring and predictable to notice her affair. I'd quietly removed my name from our lease, set up mail forwarding to a P.O. box, and opened a new bank account. Our joint account would stay active long enough for her to think everything was normal. The lease had been the tricky part. Mr. Bruckner, our landlord, was the kind of man who cared about 3 things: rent money, property damage, and rent money. When I'd explained that I needed to remove my name due to changing circumstances, he'd shrugged and handed me the paperwork. Jenna's signature alone would be sufficient, he'd said, as long as the rent kept coming. I walked to our bedroom and looked at my wife, still sleeping off whatever she'd done the night before. Her phone lay on the nightstand face down, always face down now. In the early years, she'd leave it anywhere, sometimes asking me to check her messages. Now it was guarded like state secrets. From the closet, I pulled out the small suitcase I'd packed 3 days ago. Just essentials and a few items with sentimental value. Everything else could be replaced or wasn't worth the hassle. I'd learned from my insurance work that clean breaks heal faster than messy ones. On Jenna's nightstand, I left a single item, her favorite detective novel, The Maltese Falcon, with a bookmark on page 112. Inside the bookmark, I'd written in my careful handwriting, "You'll need a clue." Let her figure out what that meant. The rain started as I loaded my car, a fitting soundtrack for washing away 8 years of marriage. The apartment building looked different in the pre-dawn darkness, smaller somehow, like a place I'd visited once but never really lived. Miss Lindholm's curtain twitched in the window across the courtyard. The old woman missed nothing, a trait that might prove useful later. I drove through empty streets toward my new temporary home, a furnished studio apartment above the hardware store on Main Street. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Paid for with money Jenna didn't know I'd been saving. She'd always handled our finances, claimed she was better with numbers. Another lie I'd been too trusting to question. My phone rang as I parked behind the hardware store. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code. "Mr. Sampson? This is Bruckner. Your wife's been calling about the lease. Says there's been some mistake." I checked my watch, 7:15. Jenna had discovered my note and probably torn the apartment apart looking for more clues. "No mistake, Mr. Bruckner. I removed my name 3 weeks ago. All the paperwork should be in order." "It is, but she's saying she can't afford the full rent on her own. Wants to know if you'll reconsider." I almost laughed. After months of finding herself and posting about happiness, reality was setting in fast. "That's between you and her now. I'm no longer responsible for that lease." Understood. Just wanted to confirm before I start eviction proceedings if she can't pay." 3 weeks. I gave her 3 weeks before the money situation would become critical. My calculations had been generous. Pete was waiting in the parking lot of Hartwell and Associates when I arrived, holding two large coffees and wearing the expression of someone who'd been expecting this conversation for months. "So," he said, handing me a cup, "you finally did it." "Did what?" "Don't play dumb with me, Ed. You've got that look. Same one you get when you catch someone padding their insurance claim. What's the plan?" We walked into the empty office building. Hartwell and Associates occupied the second floor of a converted Victorian house, all creaky floors and radiator heat. Barb, our office manager, wouldn't arrive for another hour, but I had my own key and a lot of work to do. "No plan," I said, settling at my desk. "Just cutting my losses." Pete raised an eyebrow. "Right, and I'm the Easter Bunny. Come on, Ed. I've known you since college. You don't just walk away from anything without a strategy." He wasn't wrong. 20 years of investigating insurance fraud had taught me that information was power, and power was leverage. But I wasn't ready to share the full scope of what I'd learned about Luke Petrov and his business practices. Let's just say I'm curious about my wife's new fitness routine. Barb arrived at 8:30 sharp, bringing with her the scent of cigarettes and the kind of no-nonsense energy that made her invaluable to our small firm. At 60, she'd seen every kind of human drama and retained the details like a filing cabinet with legs. "Morning, boys. Ed, you look like someone who slept in his car." "Close. New apartment." She studied my face with the intensity of a poker player reading tells. Finally figured out what half the town already knew. This was why I valued Barb. Direct, honest, and plugged into the local gossip network like a telephone operator from the old days. "What exactly does half the town know?" "That your wife's trainer isn't just training her. Word is he's got a whole roster of clients getting special attention. Some of them married, some of them not so bright about where their money goes." Pete leaned forward. "What kind of special attention?" "The kind that involves private sessions, supplement sales, and promises about getting in the best shape of their lives. Marcy Henderson from the real estate office has been bragging about her new workout routine. Same trainer, same promises. Jenna's friend from work, always posting gym selfies and motivational quotes about transformation. If Luke was running the same game on multiple women, that changed everything. Barb, hypothetically speaking, how would someone find out more about these training methods?" She smiled the way a cat smiles at a cornered mouse. "Hypothetically, someone might want to visit Pinnacle Fitness during peak hours, see who's getting trained and how often. Maybe chat with some of the other members about their experiences. And if someone wanted to know more about this trainer's background, well, fitness trainers need certification. State licensing board keeps records. Insurance companies sometimes get complaints about unlicensed practitioners making medical claims." I felt the familiar thrill of a case coming together. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about justice, the kind that comes from exposing fraud and protecting victims. My phone buzzed. Text from Jenna. "We need to talk. This is insane." I showed the message to Pete and Barb. "Don't respond," Barb advised. "Let her stew. Desperate people make mistakes, and mistakes create opportunities." She was right. Jenna was used to controlling our relationship through emotional manipulation and financial dependency. Take away her safety net, and she'd start making bad decisions. The morning passed quickly. I had 3 claims to investigate, routine stuff involving fender benders and water damage, but my mind kept drifting to Luke Petrov and his fitness empire. During lunch, I drove to Pinnacle Fitness. The gym was everything I'd expected. Gleaming equipment, motivational posters, and the kind of aggressive cleanliness that screamed lifestyle brand. Through the front windows, I could see the main workout floor, filled with people in expensive athletic wear pursuing their transformation dreams. Luke was easy to spot. 6'2", professionally tanned, wearing a tight shirt that showed off muscles like they were products for sale. He was working with a woman I didn't recognize, guiding her through exercises, with the kind of hands-on approach that seemed more intimate than instructional. I parked across the street and watched. Over the next hour, Luke worked with 3 different women. Each session followed the same pattern: close physical contact, lots of encouragement, and conversations that looked more like flirting than fitness coaching. My phone rang. "Miss Lindholm, my former neighbor." "Ed, I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the phone book." "Not at all, Miss Lindholm. What can I do for you?" "Well, it's about that young man who's been visiting your apartment, the muscular one. I've been seeing him come and go at odd hours, and this morning I saw him moving boxes." "Interesting." Luke was already moving in, probably figuring he'd found himself a sugar mama with a nice apartment and steady income. What kind of boxes? Looked like gym equipment, weights and such. And he had a woman with him I didn't recognize. Not your wife. Even more interesting. Luke was setting up shop in my former home and bringing other women around. Miss Lindholm, would you mind keeping an eye on things? I'm concerned about the property. Of course, dear. I'll let you know if I see anything unusual. I drove back to the office with a clearer picture forming. Luke wasn't just a trainer having an affair with a married woman. He was running a systematic operation, using charm and fitness promises to manipulate vulnerable women. Jenna wasn't his girlfriend. She was his latest mark. The question was, what was I going to do about it? The answer came to me that evening while reviewing insurance files at my new apartment. Fraud investigations succeeded through documentation, patience, and letting criminals expose themselves. Luke Petrov was about to get a masterclass in consequences. I started with social media. Luke's Instagram account was a monument to narcissism, shirtless photos, motivational quotes, and testimonials from grateful clients. But social media was also evidence, and evidence could be weaponized by someone who knew how to read between the lines. His client testimonials were particularly interesting. 7 women in the past 6 months, all using similar language about life-changing transformation and personal attention. 3 of them were married, based on their profile photos. 2 others had posted about expensive supplement packages they'd purchased through Luke's exclusive wellness program. I created a fake account and started following the breadcrumbs. Luke's business wasn't registered with the state. His certification credentials, prominently displayed on his profile, belonged to someone else entirely, a real trainer in California who'd probably never heard of Luke Petrov. This was fraud, plain and simple, the kind of case that would normally land on my desk if someone filed an insurance claim for financial losses. But instead of investigating it, I was going to orchestrate it. My phone buzzed. Text from Jenna. Ed, please call me. We can work this out. Still not responding. Let her panic build. The next morning, I visited 3 businesses on Main Street. The coffee shop where Jenna's friend Tara worked part-time. The salon where Marcy got her hair done, and the restaurant where both women frequently posted photos of their girls' nights out. Small towns run on gossip, and gossip runs on carefully planted seeds. At the coffee shop, I struck up a conversation with the owner, Mrs. Patterson, about local businesses and community safety. You know, I've been hearing concerns about unlicensed fitness trainers taking advantage of people, I mentioned while paying for my coffee. Someone should probably look into whether these guys are properly certified before they hurt someone. Oh my, yes. We've had several women in here talking about this new trainer. Very expensive programs, lots of promises. I hope they're being careful. At the salon, I overheard 2 women discussing Luke's supplement sales. I didn't interrupt, just listened and filed away the details. Apparently, he was charging $300 for vitamin packages that cost $30 online. The restaurant was where I hit gold. Tara was there for lunch, talking loudly on her phone about Jenna's situation. I don't know what Ed's problem is, she was saying. Jenna deserves to be happy. Luke's been so good for her confidence. I sat 2 tables away and listened to her describe how Luke had been helping several women in town with their fitness goals. How he was so dedicated that he even made house calls. House calls. That was the detail I needed. That afternoon, I paid a visit to Mr. Bruckner's office. The landlord was exactly as I remembered. Balding, sweaty, and motivated entirely by money. Mr. Sampson, heard from your wife again. Still can't make the full rent. That's unfortunate. I hope she's not violating the lease in other ways. His eyes sharpened. What kind of violations? Well, subletting to unauthorized occupants, for instance. Running a business from the premises without permission. That sort of thing. I slid a printed photo across his desk. Luke carrying equipment into the apartment building, taken by Miss Lindholm from her window. Who's this? Someone who appears to be moving in without being on the lease. He's been conducting business meetings there, bringing clients in and out at all hours. I thought you should know. Bruckner studied the photo like it was a treasure map. Business meetings? Fitness training, equipment storage, client consultations. Probably nothing, but I know you're particular about lease compliance. Damn right I am. No businesses in residential units. It's right there in the contract. He reached for his phone. I'll be making some calls. Perfect. Let Bruckner handle the legal pressure while I worked on the social destruction. That evening, I visited the Foxhole, the main street bar where half the town gathered to drink and gossip. Pete met me there, curious about my sudden interest in socializing. "You're up to something," he said, settling onto the bar stool next to mine. "And whatever it is, I want in. Just having a drink with an old friend." "Right. And I'm the Pope. Come on, Ed. What's the plan?" Before I could answer, Tara walked in with two other women I didn't recognize. They claimed a table near the back and immediately started talking in the loud, animated way of people who'd been drinking before they arrived. "That's Jenna's friend," I told Pete quietly. "The realtor, the one who's been spreading gossip about your marriage?" Among other things. We nursed our drinks and listened. After an hour and several rounds, Tara's voice carried across the room. "I'm telling you, Luke's amazing. He's helping so many women in this town find themselves. Jenna's just the latest." One of her companions leaned closer. "Latest what?" "Latest woman to benefit from his expertise. He's got this whole program, very exclusive, very personal. Some of these women are paying him thousands for private sessions." Pete raised an eyebrows. "Thousands?" I nodded. "Apparently fitness is very expensive these days." Tara continued. "Marcy's been working with him too. Says he's completely changed her life. Very hands-on approach." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Tara revealing details about Luke's client list, his pricing structure, and his living situation. By the time she left, half the bar had heard about the expensive trainer who was helping married women with their personal transformation. Mission accomplished. My phone buzzed as Pete and I walked to our cars. Text from an unknown number. "This is Luke. We need to talk." I showed Pete the message. "You going to respond?" "Eventually. But first, I want to see how desperate he gets." Luke's desperation revealed itself the next morning, when I found him waiting by my car in the Hartwell & Associates parking lot. Up close, he looked less like a fitness model and more like a man who'd been losing sleep. "Good. Ed Sampson? That's me. We need to talk about your wife." I unlocked my car door and tossed my briefcase inside, taking my time. "My ex-wife. And no, we don't. Look, man, I know this is awkward, but Jenna's in trouble. The landlord's threatening eviction, and she's freaking out. Maybe we can work something out." The audacity was impressive. He was actually trying to negotiate on Jenna's behalf, like I owed them both a favor. Sounds like a personal problem. Luke stepped closer, trying to use his size as intimidation. "Don't be a jerk about this. She made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to lose her home." I pulled out my phone and started recording, holding it casually at my side. "What kind of mistake?" "You know what kind. But it's not like she planned this. Things just happened. Things like moving you into my apartment. Things like using my credit to fund your supplement business. Things like that." His face changed, confidence cracking around the edges. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Tell me, Luke. Are you actually certified as a fitness trainer?" "Of course I am." "Great. I'd love to see your credentials. For insurance purposes, you understand. Liability and all that." He took a step back. "Insurance? I investigate fraud for a living. It's amazing what people try to get away with when they think nobody's paying attention." I could see him processing this information, realizing that his Mark's husband wasn't the pushover he'd assumed. "Look, I don't want any trouble. Then you should probably find a new place to live. And a new business model." I got in my car and drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot. The recording would be useful later, but first I had other stops to make. Pete was waiting in the office with coffee and news. "Barb's been making calls," he said. "Your trainer friend has some interesting history." Barb looked up from her computer with the satisfied expression of someone who'd struck gold. "Luke Petrov, real name Lucas Peterson, originally from New Hampshire. No fitness certification, no business license, and a very interesting pattern of moving from town to town every 6 to 8 months." "What kind of pattern?" "The kind where he targets women with money problems, offers them transformation packages, takes their cash, and disappears when things get complicated. Usually leaves behind angry clients and unpaid debts." She handed me a printed report. 3 towns in the past 2 years. Same story each time. Shows up, joins the local gym, starts offering private training, builds a client base of vulnerable women, then vanishes. Any legal trouble. Complaints filed, but nothing that stuck. He's careful to stay just inside the law. Until now. What's different about now? Now he's dealing with someone who knows how to build a case. She was right. Luke had made a critical error by targeting Jenna. Through her, he'd exposed himself to someone with the skills and motivation to destroy him systematically. I spent the morning documenting everything I'd learned. Luke's fake credentials, his unlicensed business operations, his pattern of targeting married women, and his history of moving between towns. By lunch, I had enough evidence to file complaints with the state licensing board, the local business bureau, and the Consumer Protection Agency. But official complaints would take months to process. I needed faster results. That afternoon, I visited Pinnacle Fitness during peak hours. The gym was crowded with the usual mix of serious athletes and resolution makers. Luke was training a woman I recognized from Tara's social media posts, one of Jenna's acquaintances from her marketing job. I approached the front desk and asked to speak with the manager about trainer certifications. "We require all our trainers to provide proof of certification," the manager assured me. "It's posted right there on the wall." I looked at the certificates displayed behind the desk. Luke's was prominently featured, showing credentials from the American Council on Exercise. The same credentials I'd verified belonged to someone else. Interesting. I'm an insurance investigator, and I've been looking into some concerns about fraudulent certifications. Would you mind if I took a photo of this for my records? The manager's face went pale. "Is there a problem?" "Potentially. I'd recommend verifying the authenticity of all your trainers' credentials. Liability issues, you understand." I left my business card and walked away, knowing that Luke's employment would be under review within hours. My phone rang as I reached my car. "Miss Lindholm." "Ed, dear, you asked me to keep an eye on things. Well, there's quite a commotion over here. Police cars, official-looking people. I think it has to do with the lease violations you mentioned." Perfect timing. Bruckner had moved faster than I'd expected. "What's happening?" "That trainer fellow is loading boxes into his car, looking very upset. Your wife is crying on the front steps, and there's a woman here I don't recognize, also crying. Quite a scene." The other woman would be one of Luke's other clients, probably someone who'd been storing belongings in the apartment or using it for training sessions. "Thank you for keeping me informed, Miss Lindholm." "Of course, dear. Oh, and Ed, I always thought you were too good for her." I drove toward the apartment complex, not to interfere but to observe. Sometimes the best revenge was simply watching your enemies destroy themselves. The scene was exactly as Miss Lindholm had described. Luke's car was packed with gym equipment and personal belongings. Jenna sat on the front steps in workout clothes, mascara streaked down her face. A woman I didn't recognize stood beside Luke's car, gesticulating angrily. I parked across the street and rolled down my window to listen. "You said this was temporary," the woman was shouting. "You said you just needed a place to store equipment." "Plans changed," Luke replied, tossing a duffel bag into his back seat. "I'll pay you back when I can." "With what money? You took $3,000 for supplements that never arrived." Jenna looked up from the steps. "3,000? Luke, you told me she was just a training client." "She is a client. This is business." "What business?" Jenna's voice was getting louder. "You don't even have a real business license." And there it was. The moment when victims start comparing notes and realizing they've all been played by the same con artist. The argument continued for another 10 minutes, with Luke trying to manage two angry women while loading his car. Finally, he got behind the wheel and drove off, leaving Jenna and the other woman staring after him. I started my engine and followed at a distance. Luke drove straight to the highway, heading north toward New Hampshire, running true to pattern, abandoning ship when the situation became untenable. But this time, he wouldn't get away clean. I had documentation of his fraudulent business practices, recordings of his attempts at intimidation, and a network of angry clients who were just beginning to realize they'd been scammed. My phone buzzed. Text from Jenna. "Please come home. I made a terrible mistake." Home! As if that word still meant something after everything that had happened. I typed back. "You made your choice. Live with it." Then I blocked her number and drove toward the foxhole. It was time for the final phase of my plan. The foxhole was packed that evening, filled with the usual crowd of locals unwinding after work. But tonight felt different. There was an electric tension in the air, the kind that comes when scandal breaks wide open in a small town. Tara was holding court at a corner table, surrounded by women I recognized as Luke's former clients. Their voices carried across the room, angry and getting louder with each round of drinks. $3,000, one woman was saying. Gone. And those supplements he promised never showed up. "At least you got something," another replied. "I paid $1,500 for private sessions that turned out to be him trying to get me into bed." "We should call the police." "And tell them what? That we were stupid enough to trust a con artist?" I ordered a beer and listened to the conversation develop. These women were realizing they'd all been victims of the same scam, and their anger was building towards something explosive. Pete arrived an hour later, sliding onto the bar stool beside me. Heard there was drama at your old place today. Luke decided to relocate, suddenly. And Jenna? Learning about consequences. Across the room, Tara's voice rose above the crowd noise. I can't believe I defended him. I actually told people he was helping women find themselves. He was helping himself, someone replied. To our money. And our marriages, added another voice. The conversation was attracting attention from other patrons. Soon, half the bar was listening to the women describe Luke's operation. The fake credentials, the overpriced supplements, the promises of transformation that never materialized. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. This isn't over. Luke, probably. I showed the message to Pete. You worried? About Luke? No. He's finished in this town. Probably finished in this state once word spreads. What about Jenna? That was the more complex question. Jenna had been Luke's victim too, in a way. But she'd also chosen to betray our marriage, lie about her activities, and use our shared resources to fund her affair. Sympathy had its limits. She made her bed. The women's conversation had shifted to action planning. They were talking about filing complaints, warning other potential victims, and making sure Luke couldn't run the same scam in another town. We should post about this online, Tara was saying. Make sure everyone knows what he really is. Social media blast, hit all the local groups. And the fitness forums, warn other women. I finished my beer and left cash on the bar. The women were handling their own revenge now, and they'd be more thorough than anything I could orchestrate. Luke's reputation would be destroyed across multiple platforms by morning. Outside, the evening air was cool and clean. Spring was coming to Maine, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings. I walked to my car, feeling lighter than I had in months. My phone rang. Jenna, calling from a different number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ed, please don't hang up. Her voice was small, defeated. The confident woman who'd posted about finding happiness was gone, replaced by someone who sounded lost and desperate. What do you want, Jenna? I want to apologize. I want to explain. There's nothing to explain. You chose Luke over our marriage. You chose excitement over stability. You chose lies over honesty. Those were your decisions. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, start over. No, we can't. Why not? Because of your pride? The question hung in the air between us. Was this about pride, or was it about something deeper? It's not about pride, Jenna. It's about trust. You didn't just cheat on me. You lied to me for months. You used our shared resources to fund your affair. You posted about our private life on social media like it was entertainment. I was confused. I thought I wanted something different. And now I realize what I lost. What you threw away, I corrected. There's a difference. Silence on the line. Then, so that's it? 8 years of marriage, and you're just walking away? You walked away first. I'm just making it official. What am I supposed to do now? I can't afford the apartment. I don't have anywhere to go. That's not my problem anymore. How can you be so cold? Cold. As if caring about someone gave them the right to betray you without consequences. As if love meant accepting any behavior, forgiving any transgression, enabling any destruction. I'm not cold, Jenna. I'm done. I hung up and blocked the new number. The drive home took me past our old apartment building. The windows were dark, and I could see a notice posted on the front door. Eviction proceedings, probably. Jenna would have to find somewhere else to live, someone else to support her lifestyle. That wasn't cruelty, that was reality. At my new apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat by the window overlooking Main Street. Below, the town was settling into evening routines. Families finishing dinner, teenagers gathering at the pizza place, couples walking hand in hand toward the movie theater. Normal life. The kind of life I'd thought Jenna and I were building together. My laptop chimed with a new email. The subject line read, "Thank you." It was from one of Luke's victims, a woman named Patricia who'd been at the Foxhole earlier. I don't know if you'll remember me, but I was married to your high school classmate Tom Bradley. We divorced 2 years ago, and I've been struggling to rebuild my life. Luke promised he could help me get in shape and feel confident again. Instead, he took my money and made me feel worse about myself. I heard tonight that you were the one who exposed him. I wanted you to know how grateful I am. He would have kept hurting women if someone hadn't stood up to him. You saved other people from going through what we went through. I know this probably wasn't easy for you, dealing with your own situation while helping the rest of us. But you did the right thing. I stared at the email for a long time. Patricia was right that it hadn't been easy. But she was also right that it had been necessary. Luke was gone, his scam exposed, his victims warned, and organizing their own justice. Jenna was facing the consequences of her choices without my resources to cushion the impact. The apartment lease was terminated, the joint accounts were closed, and the marriage was effectively over. Project Extraction was complete. But as I sat in my quiet apartment, looking out at the peaceful street below, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore. The rage that had sustained me through weeks of planning and execution had burned itself out, leaving behind something cleaner and more durable: relief. For the first time in months, I wasn't wondering where Jenna really was or what she was really doing. I wasn't checking her social media posts for hidden meanings or analyzing her behavior for signs of deception. I wasn't living in the constant state of vigilance that comes with loving someone who's betraying you. I was free. My phone buzzed one last time. Text from Pete. Beer tomorrow? You look like you could use some normal conversation. I typed back. Sounds perfect. Outside my window, Millbrook settled into night. Somewhere in town, Jenna was probably crying into a phone, calling friends who were no longer sure they wanted to be associated with her drama. Luke was probably driving through the darkness toward whatever town would host his next scam. But that was their story now, not mine. I closed the laptop, finished my wine, and went to bed in my own space, on my own terms, with my own clear conscience. Tomorrow would bring new cases to investigate, new frauds to expose, new problems to solve. But tonight, for the first time in months, I slept without wondering what lies I'd discover in the morning. The reckoning was complete. The underdog had won.